Leadership and Management Rig. Today, our key speaker is Dr. Steve Lambert from the University of Chester, who will be talking about what can higher education leadership learn from the further education sector. But just a few things before we look at that. So in terms of today's agenda, we're going to just do some very brief introductions in terms of myself and my two colleagues who help to run this research interest group. I'll talk about them in a minute. Then Dr. Steve Lambert, as I said, will give his talk. There will be opportunities for questions after that. And then we would like to hear from you in terms of knowing what you want from this research interest group and to give us some ideas of the types of things you would like to see us do in the future. And we'll do that through Mentimeter to give us some sort of a recording of it. And then I'll just do a bit of a plug for the conference 2026. So just as way of introduction, my name is Alan Johnston. I'm a senior lecturer in management and organisational development at York St John University. My two colleagues in terms of running this research interest group are Dr. Ali Coleman and Dr. Abdullah Sadiq. Unfortunately, Abdullah can't be with us today due to teaching commitment, but Ali is also on the call. And those of you can see pictures will be able to see here on there. Ali is a program leader for MA Educational Leadership at UCL Centre for Educational Leadership, and Abdullah is a senior lecturer in education at the University of Derby. We are reasonably new to being the co-conveners for this rig. I think we have all been enrolled now for best part of 6 months, I think it is. And what we're trying to do is provide a research interest group that actually meets the members and actually provides what we want and what we would like to see the rig be active in. So please, when the opportunity comes, please do let us know. So as I said, I'm now going to pass on to Steve, who I'm going to unshare my screen, Steve, and let you share yours.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alan. I shall.
I'm assuming, have I unshared?
Nope, it's still sharing at the moment.
But, I'm not very good with.
Let's try that.
Working.
Steve, do you want to try now?
Yeah, I can. That should start to come through.
Yeah.
Or am I sharing the wrong? Actually, I think I'm sharing the wrong window. Okay, screen 3. Okay, hopefully you can see my slides. Fantastic. Okay, thanks, Alan. Thanks, colleagues. It's lovely to be here. As Alan said, I'm Steve Lambert. I'm Associate Professor of Educational Leadership at the University of Chester, although I'm actually nowhere near Chester. I'm probably closer to Ali in London. I'm sort of just on the outskirts in Reading, so probably closer to UCL than I am to Chester. My background is very much further education. I've spent pretty much my entire career working in either further or higher education, and often we sort of think about these two as almost slightly different sort of sectors, and never the twain shall meet. But I was looking at some of the statistics and data around higher education recently, and then started to think about, well, okay, so what's this looking like, and what's it looking like for the FE sector? And there's been a lot published recently around sort of the challenges that universities across the country are facing in terms of financial struggles and the efficiencies they have had to try and implement, um, with courses being closed or optional modules being cut. And I suspect that a number of us will recognize that within our own organizations. We've certainly had um, pathways for courses sort of reduced. We've not closed any departments, um, but certainly the number of optional modules available to students, both at undergraduate and postgraduate level, has sort of changed slightly. And there's no sort of, that looks like it's going to continue to happen for the next sort of couple of years at least, as institutions try and grapple with rising costs. We're also seeing at the same time some difficulties within sort of the policy that's coming forward. We've historically seen the drive to allow more students and expect more students to access higher education. We obviously saw fees to introduce being introduced to pay for that, and we've saw a modest amount in undergraduate tuition fees announced just about a year ago from the Secretary of State. That shifted the emphasis to some extent on requiring institutions to look overseas for students, which is an incredibly competitive market to attract overseas students. And we've heard again the government sort of touting ideas around a tax on overseas students to come to the UK. A lot of them are coming for the post-study work visa, and we've seen reductions in the duration that students can stay following graduation, and also limitations on bringing dependents over while they're studying. So again, it's an increasingly challenging time. Let's say we heard about from the Secretary of State last year about the tokenistic increase in tuition fees, which we all know isn't going to cover anything. It may just allow us to keep the price of coffee the same level in the canteens and coffee outlets across the institution, but it's certainly not going to pay for anything meaningful. And we had the announcement only a couple of weeks ago that the government wants 2/3 of young people to study either at university or higher technical qualifications. So again, this massification continues. And we need to think about, okay, so if everybody's studying for higher level qualifications, who's going to do all the jobs that don't require higher level qualifications? So we're in this really sort of difficult predicament at the moment within the higher education sector. What we're starting to see is an increase in mergers. We saw last year the successful merger of St George's University, part of University of London, with City University in London, to create a very large institution through the mergers of these two organisations, now called City St George's, covering sort of central and south London. That's not the only one. It's certainly not unique. We had only a few months ago the announcement that Greenwich University and the University of Kent are going to collaborate under a new organisational title. They've not settled on that yet. At the moment, it's London and South East University Group, but they're going to be separate organisations, but under one name? And will we see a rationalization of possibly provision, possibly back office professional services? It could be that these become increasingly common. We just don't know. There's others, I'm sure, that have taken place. But within the further education sector, this is to some extent old news for colleagues who are in the further education sector, because for the past 10 years or so, we've had area-based reviews. This idea that the government intervenes a lot more in certainly the further education sector to ensure that we have a resilient and stable system of post-16 education. So what we've seen is that there's been a reduction in the number of further education colleges as they start to rationalize, as they start to merge. Some have closed, very few have closed, but most of them have been taken over into joined as sort of parts of larger college groups. So we can see there's 213 colleges in England, 156 general FE colleges. That's down from, if we go back to incorporation, where there were 427 colleges. So we've had a 50% reduction in colleges since incorporation. Now, obviously, that's quite a long period of time, but we've had 98 mergers since 2010. So this idea of colleges merging to form larger entities, larger groups is not uncommon. It is something that we're increasingly seeing. And as part of that, there's been this sort of rationalization of curriculum. Do we all need to offer the same courses? And that, or should we be looking at having specialist areas of curriculum? So if there's within a certain geographical area, if I want to do a particular type of course, then there is a particular institution that is best placed to serve my needs, rather than everybody trying to do everything, which is what we've historically seen. We're moving much more towards collaboration rather than competition. So we've seen a shift, but against that managerial backdrop that we continue to operate within. So we've got some examples of merged institutions. This is the Activate group in sort of Surrey, Berkshire, Oxfordshire. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 colleges there. They also run a number of schools, number of academy schools. That started off as a single college, as City of Oxford College, and then it sort of expanded its network, taking on, I think the most recent acquisition was probably Farnham or Guildford College. I think Farnham, down in sort of Hampshire. So a large college group. We've got Capital City College Group, one of the largest college groups in the country, sprawling across London, from Angel, King's Cross, Westminster, up to Tottenham. So again, a large college group. And we then have the likes of London South East colleges working in sort of the east of London, and also sort of stretching into some of the home counties. These are just some of the ones that are sort of spring to mind when I think about the merged colleges. But we've also got the likes of Newcastle College Group, which stretch from Newcastle right the way down into London, down the east coast. We've got around in Cheshire the various merged college groups around there. I just saw David Cracknell appear on the screen, so he will know the college groups around sort of the Cheshire way. again, this idea that colleges are coming together. Are we going to start to see the same for the university sector in order to um, continue to operate in a resilient and stable way? Because that's what all these colleges have had to have done. If we just go back to somewhere like the Activate group, could Bracknell and Wokingham College, as a small as a town on the outskirts of Berkshire, could that college have survived going forward as competition for students increases? Funding is not keeping pace with it, or do they need the backing, the support of a large college group in order to uh, ensure the longevity of the provision in that area? So there's lots of things to consider, lots of benefits. Yes, there are some drawbacks, but we don't seem to be seeing this in the HE sector. We've also got a blurring of accountability lines in HE, which is to some extent muddying the water. Inspection of apprenticeship provision a few years ago moved from, I think it was under QAA, it moved to Ofsted. This was taken, there were some of you would have seen this, it was from, and I can't see my notes because they're on the slide I'm sharing, but a colleague in Huddersfield who did this research, and it's very much around staff not or institutions not being sufficiently focused on the apprenticeship agenda, staff sometimes being sidelined because the apprenticeship provision is not their core function. Their core business is possibly undergraduate, full-time undergraduate students in many cases. So having maybe 1,000 apprentices may only be 10% or 5% of their total student body. And staff were reporting that it is difficult. You suddenly get a phone call 2 days before an inspection, and people aren't sure what to expect. They're not used to the accountability framework that Ofsted has. Now, you can read this and think, actually, is this a criticism of Ofsted? Or is this a criticism of the sector not being adequately prepared? I was told a number of years ago that by a senior member of staff in an institution that apprenticeships were a race to the bottom. Um, well, if that were true, then most institutions would be plummeting there really, really quickly. Certainly at my daughter's graduation back in the summer, the Vice Chancellor was very keen to highlight that they were the first Russell Group university to get awarded outstanding by Ofsted. So we are seeing this blurring between the further and higher education sectors, and we're starting to see that creep in terms of what Ofsted will inspect. Historically, within the FE sector, they've always inspected the main sort of FE provision, including apprenticeships, but not the higher level of apprenticeships. But now they're inspecting the higher level apprenticeships in colleges as well as universities. And it is challenging for those institutions. I led an inspection of a university a number of weeks ago, and I spent the first morning trying to track down who the right person was to speak to, because nobody, when I phoned reception and said I was from Ofsted, nobody wanted to pick up the phone to me. So we can't continue to bury our heads in the sand with these things. We've also seen within the FE sector that the level of funding has continued to fall in real terms. Certainly for 16 to 19-year-olds, by about 25% real term reduction, a 50% real term reduction for adult skills. So anybody over the age of 19, they're now unlikely to get funding unless it's for English for speakers of other languages or basic English and maths qualifications. Obviously, both further and higher education have seen an increase in expenditure, what with increases in employer contribution for national insurance, um, as well as rise in energy costs, things like that. Yet, despite this, colleges have managed to reduce, or the number of colleges in financial deficit has steadily been going down since 2015 to 16 to 23, 24, which was the last set of published data. So despite there being these pressures on reductions in funding, increase in costs, we are seeing fewer further education colleges. And I use that in the broadest term. So that includes sixth form colleges and others. A reduction in those with a financial deficit. So FE has been consistently worse, in a worse financial position for universities for a number of years. And they've had to grapple with all these, with sort of the different challenges around sort of area-based reviews and the change in accountability frameworks. We're just going into, on the 10th of November, into the next inspection framework. So this will be certainly my third as a serving inspector, and I've lost count how many as a professional within the further and higher education sector, how many inspection frameworks have come and gone. So it always feels, I always say that FE is almost playing catch up to the schools sector, because the schools were grappling with some of these issues and the idea of multi-academy trusts long before the Blair government sort of popularised them in the late 2000s. I always feel that FE is catching up to the school sector. I also now increasingly feel that HE is catching up to the FE sector in some respects. And that's not doing a disservice to individuals who are on the ground working all hours under the sun to make sure the students continue to get the best experience possible. But we are working in a system which is becoming increasingly fraught, and decisions are being made for a variety of different reasons, whether those are financial to ensure the sustainability of the organization, or are they being made in the best interests of the students that we serve? And who are those students now? My own institution very proudly announced recently that a third of the student population is postgraduate, which is great. It brings in a lot of cash for the institution. But what about the local students? And that are we becoming an international university? So how can we consider what's happened within the FE sector and what learning can be applied to the HE sector? There's been a lot of mergers. We've seen, as we said, there's been a 50% reduction in the number of FE colleges. We've had 98 mergers since 2010. Are we going to start to see this in HE? Are we going to have regional groups of universities, whether they formally merge like City and St. George's, or whether they collaborate like Kent and Greenwich? Is that going to become the new norm? Or are we just looking at sort of the extremes of the system? How can we better ensure that we can cope with the accountability changes that Ofsted are likely to bring about? Universities have seen the benefits of apprenticeships. A lot of universities are delivering apprenticeship provision in a vast number of different areas. the challenge for some of them will be when the level 7 apprenticeships are defunded in January. Is that going to impact them because they've been running level 7 senior leadership apprenticeships and putting all their senior staff on for a free MBA? How's that going to impact the sector? Do we need to be more proactive? And these are questions to yourselves as within the sector. Do we need to be more proactive working with our local providers? Is having an outreach team really enough to secure the sustainable future of our organization? Or should we be looking to rationalize the curriculum? And if there's multiple HE providers within a geographical area, should some of them become sort of preferred centers for if you want to do this course, you go to this setting. If you want to do this course, you go to that setting there, rather than us all trying to compete, offering the same courses to the same target market. And if this sounds a little bit far-fetched, well, consider London South Bank University. They've set up a group which includes 2 FE colleges are now part of that group. I think a general FE college and a sixth form college. They've also got 2 schools as part of that, an 11 to 19 secondary school, and then a 16 to 19 academy. And then they've got their enterprise center as well. So you then have they've not all merged. So these aren't dual sector mergers. These are operating under essentially like a multi-academy trust where each individual entity has its own senior leadership team, and then there's a board made up of the heads of each of those organizations having that strategic oversight. So is this model going to start to become more popular? So when I spoke to the former vice chancellor, because it changed in the summer, talking to David Phoenix when he was vice chancellor, he was saying it's very much about aligning their curriculum. So there's that throughput from school into sixth form, into FE, into HE. Now, that's obviously slightly different to what we've seen in the past with dual sector mergers, the likes of, as it was then, Thames Valley University and Reading College, where they tried to merge and then divested a few years later. This is part of a group rather than a merger. Whereas, so similar to the University of Kent and Greenwich University, where they're working together under a shared leadership, whereas City, University, and St George's is much more about that merger under and the dissolving of the 2 governing bodies and bringing together a new one. So that these things are starting to happen. Is London South Bank University or LSBU Group, are they paving the way for a new form of further and higher education? Or again, are these just outliers? What are your thoughts? I'll hand it over to yourselves and to Alan. Now, what are your thoughts on this? Have we seen the end of a standalone university, or is that on the cards for some institutions? Are we going to start to see a more joined up approach? Alan, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, Steve. Does anybody have any comments or questions? If you don't want to speak, you can always put them in the chat and I'm happy to read them out.
I think Ali's got her hand up and Daniel, but I can't see who's first.
Should we let Daniel go first? Yes.
Thanks very much. Thanks for that. It's it's a really funny sort of insight into what I thought should have started happening a long time ago. So my background is further education as a practitioner, and moved through the management ranks in FE, and then surprise, surprise, made redundant. I don't think I've met anybody in FE who hasn't been made redundant. So I had my turn a few years back, and I left the sector and didn't come back. But I've been doing a PhD on governance and education in further education, hence my interest here, along with I think that's probably why Stephanie's here too. Thanks for the presentation and the oversight of it. I wrote a scrappy paper just to myself and a few other colleagues, just talking about what was going on in FE in 2013, I think it was. And we had come up with the idea of, well, surely you should have a nursery that feeds a primary, that feeds a secondary, that feeds a college, that feeds a university. And here we are, all these years later. I mean, it's almost financial survival. But I do wonder what the driving forces are. But, sorry, I'm getting some background feedback there of somebody. So I do wonder what the driving forces are behind this, and whether it's institutions who are genuinely looking to work in very difficult circumstances and trying to work out what the best value is, or whether it's trying for certain individuals, and we've seen unfortunate examples of this in some cases, where they're just trying to cling on through some level of personal interest, or dare I say vanity. And it's not quite clear always what's going on. And there may be something more pragmatic between the two, but you would hope that some leaders in the sector are doing this out of recognizing that their institutions are public services to some extent, and clearly that's challenged with the quasi-marketization of all of the sectors that you've mentioned. But I'm always curious as to kind of what the motivations are. When I've been speaking to leaders, it's not always clear, and I think, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. I think we've certainly seen the vanity side of it, haven't we, in the past? If you go back to some of the early, certainly dual sector mergers, they were very much, or certainly some of them, and one of the ones I was involved in the fallout from was very much about vanity. I wonder if now it's much more around the financial sort of surviving rather than anything else. I don't know what colleagues think about it. Ali, you got your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find my my hand up icon to start with, so I apologize. Yeah, thanks so much, Steve. That's really, really interesting. And I think the area around mergers and kind of reconfiguration of the landscape and the kind of partnerships is really, really interesting. And I suppose, we understand some of the sort of rationalization kind of sensibility around this, which works, can seem to make sense from an economic kind of proposition. But I think we also, as kind of scholars or as practitioners within this space, need to think about the sort of impact it has on students. And there's quite a lot of really interesting research about how it does impact on students, and that it can have actually a long tail of kind of negative impact for some students as they go through that experience. And obviously, within the FE landscape, and to a certain extent the HE landscape, we tend to have students for quite a short period of time. So if they go through that sort of, quite, significant change, it does have that impact. And I suppose then in the Spellmath space, it's like, what's then the implication for leadership? How can leadership best navigate this? So I think it was really useful to think about this with you, Steve. So thank you.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we kind of sort of just skirted around the edge of some of this with the COVID pandemic and the impact that that's had. Now, that was obviously forced upon us. But if we're making conscious decisions to change the way that we structure the education system at that sort of 16, 18 onwards sort of point, and just seeing a comment from Louise in the chat about sort of online and hybrid delivery. It's almost, we need to think about what is our purpose? What are we trying to sort of do? What's our focus? Is it to get people through qualifications, or is it to prepare people to enter the workforce? And should that be shaping some of the decisions that we make? Because yes, we could argue that it's more cost effective to have online delivery, but actually, in terms of me being ready for work, that's a different matter. Are there any examples of other countries of where this through the line model has been successful, and what can we learn from them? So my mouse is I can't read the last bit. Seeing it hasn't been successfully proved in the UK yet. No, it hasn't been proved in the UK yet. I suspect there are models sort of all through education. I can't think off the top of my head. But one of the curiosities around the UK system is we all have to prove that it doesn't work or it does work. We can't almost accept that other people try something, and maybe that's the academics in us, the sort of curiosity. But we do, if a merger or something doesn't work within one organization, then we automatically assume it will work in ours, and we don't necessarily learn from it. But I think there are certainly there will be models where it has worked in other countries. I'm just trying to think. I do quite a bit of work with the Spanish Ministry of Education, but their model is similar to ours, where it's separate. So I don't know if anybody else has any sort of know of any.
I'm just popping some in the chat.
Oh, wonderful! Thanks, Ali.
While you're doing that, Ali, we've got a question from Stephanie.
Hi. No, I was going to comment. What you're talking about is very similar to what I've been doing in my PhD.
All right.
So I'm in the minor amendment stage of my thesis.
Fantastic! Congratulations.
Although sometimes they don't feel very minor. But so my title is The Governance of English Further Education Colleges. Is it fit for purpose?
Mm.
And whilst I sort of started on what was happening within the college, it very much evolved to really talking about system governance.
Mm.
So a lot of what you've talked about are things that I've looked at. Some of what you've talked about are things that I'm recommending. But just to throw a few comments in, in terms of the reduction in size of the FE sector, or in terms of number of colleges, quite a lot of sixth form colleges have converted to academies.
Yeah.
So that accounts for a big chunk of sixth form colleges converting to academies. Then there have been a lot of, as you've highlighted, a lot of mergers of FE colleges. Part of that through the area review process. The area review process did in a lot of cases put money in.
Yeah.
So I think it's in terms of some colleges, some mergers were very much strategic mergers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them were, to some extent, financial rescue.
Mm-hmm.
So there has been government money put in to make some of them happen. And I think I would also say be careful of what you wish for.
Oh, yeah.
Because colleges have now been deemed to be part of the public sector again.
Yeah.
So throwing ONS reclassification, which means colleges have to comply with managing public money. There are a lot of things they have to have consent for in terms of level of pay for senior execs. Just for example, they are very unlikely to be able to do commercial borrowing now. It's not you cannot, but you need consent, and you need the government assumption is that government will be able to borrow more cheaply. So a lot of the autonomy that colleges arguably had, they actually will no longer have.
Yeah.
which for me, thinking about governance particularly, sort of caught me causing into question the ability actually for free decision making by the governors.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And some of these, like I say, were driven, or the carrot was sort of dangled in front of colleges for for a variety of reasons, but a lot of them it was a financial carrot, wasn't it? Because of money coming in through area-based reviews for the structured appraisal analysis. Also with 16 to 19 academies, there was a capital incentive that if you wanted to build something, there was capital incentives for being a 16 to 19 academy rather than a sixth form college. There's obviously issues around VAT that rumble around.
Yeah.
But like I say, yeah, be careful for what you wish for, because if you're a sixth form college or a 16 to 19 academy, then you're on teachers paying conditions, which can be, as we saw back end of last calendar year, there was issues around the 5% pay increase for staff in sixth form colleges, and um, some of them struggled for quite a while to pay that pay increase to the staff. So yeah, it is. There's never a good solution, is there? It's what is
No.
the least bad solution, which is
Yeah.
a depressing way of looking at it.
But I mean, I think you talked about London South Bank, and I think that sort of example of a very broad education group, to me, is a way forward.
Yeah.
But within that, I'm then specifically defining colleges as sort of an entity within that. So within that group, you would have your HE entity, you would have a college, you would have your schools, like they say.
Yeah.
So it is a model that I would see going forward.
Yeah, and that's almost feels like a federated model rather than sort of something that's more defined by a governance or a merger sort of structure. So yeah, I wonder if we're going to see more of those sorts of approaches. I don't know. I haven't got a crystal ball today.
Move on to Rachel's question or comment.
Hi, thank you very much. Really interesting. So my I'm a PhD student, but I'm also a member of staff of a university, a relatively large Russell Group institution, but I worked for many years at a post 92. And I think I agree with a lot of what you said. I think part of the, universities are about as quick to change as an iceberg, not in climate crisis. They they've had this autonomy for so long, and whilst the sector itself wants to see real and dynamic change, that dynamic change is really about everybody else except themselves, I think, is a kind of take on it. And I think the HE sector is really struggling with the balancing act of this sort of business mentality versus education mentality, that somehow education is not a business. And I think it is definitely the older institutions that struggle with that the most, because that was never why they were created in the first place. And I think, working in an institution where, I mean, we're thankfully in a relatively stable position. We're not in one of the universities that, is really struggling financially at the moment. We've gone a very long time without having really what I would call kind of business strategy around our management systems, our governance systems, etc. And trying to change that is not an easy thing. So then when you do get private providers coming in who are set up as business models, and they are able to create good outcomes from fairly early on. I do have an issue with private provision in the sense that, you know, it is very money driven. And, you know, only this morning on Wonk HE, yeah, I'm sure plenty of you will have seen the comment around franchising, and especially around private provision franchising, and students not being given the right experience that they're paying for. So I think I don't have any answers, but I think it's a really interesting conversation, and I think as part of this group that connection and that pipeline between FE and HE, I think is really crucial, and we can learn obviously from each other. So thank you very much.
No, thanks, Rachel. It's really helpful.
Any further questions?
I can't work out how to put my hand up, so excuse me. I actually work in further education in quite a reasonably unique perspective. That I'm a consultant who works with a number of colleges, and I've probably worked in about 7 in the last 5 years. And I think it's under not really prominent about the resilience of further FE colleges as organisations and their ability to reconfigure. Looking at the white paper, we've got to reconfigure again very shortly with V levels and maths and English, which is my particular area of specialism. And one thing, and I really enjoyed what you're saying, because I have very little knowledge of HE, actually, other than doing my doctoral work as a student. And it did strike me that I think it's going to depend on the type of HE institution and how their willingness to work with further education colleges. You see a lot of the post-92 universities are already working with FE colleges through teacher ed and teacher training, and they're the ones where there's more of a pipeline of students from FE colleges, particularly general FE colleges, to those universities that former polytechnics, I suppose you call them, post-92, but universities where they're aimed more at the local population as well. So I think that is there, but I think the resilience of FE colleges and their resilience to reconfigure their curriculum and to meet the needs of young people who enter them, and that those institutions still remain viable, those young people, is something that always strikes me as I go around the country and to many colleges. It'd be interesting to see how universities do respond to that, because for certain institutions there is an immense amount of synergy. There already is pipelines going on, especially my hometown of Birmingham. I think of those students who move from the already merged colleges. Some of these institutions are 6 or 7 colleges merged. Already got the pipeline into the local post-92 university, less so to the red brick traditional university. So I find it very, very interesting sitting here from an FE perspective, and having lived through several mergers and seeing many institutions, seeing that HE perspective and how they can work together in the future to become more resilient as a entire post-16 sector, post-compulsory sector.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. It's interesting because you talked about sort of the having to sort of reshape and adapt to the curriculum again, and obviously the introduction of the B levels, or the planned introduction. Well, we haven't really got, the sector hasn't really got a good grip on T levels at the moment, and a lot of institutions are not accepting T levels, or accepting them on paper but not accepting them in when a student turns up to enroll, or puts it on the UCAS form that they're doing a T level. So I think it's just another way of, it was highlighted that they're going to reorder the qualifications, so it's going to become the vocational, academic, and technical levels. So we can play around with the acronyms to get VAT, which is sort of an issue across the sector. So the FE sector's resilience is tested on a regular basis. And for those of you who are old enough or been around long enough, will remember the old 14 to 19 diplomas, which the schools and FE colleges tried to implement back in sort of the early 2000s and mid 2000s, which was another wonderful idea of the government's, which cost a bucket full of cash and got very, not very far indeed. So I can just see Andy McCarroll's popped up at full screen for me, and I'm not sure if I should be worried or not.
Don't be worried, Steve.
Oh, that's okay then. He's going to nag me about the paper, which is I'm still working on.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Can we show our appreciation to Steve, either virtually or in reality? So I just want to move on now and just share my screen again, if I can figure out how to do that again. Share this one. And this is really the chance to tell us what you want. Problem is that it's covering up the information on here. So I get rid of that. Hopefully people will be able to see the screen. We just thought we would use Mentimeter. So anybody who's used to Mentimeter, if you can join at that code. If you don't want to use Mentimeter, feel free to put comments in the chat. But we just got 3 questions that we would like you to comment on. First of all, what interests you about the post-16 education, leadership and management rig? So what's made you come along to today's session or be members of the rig? So we're not going to pick out anybody's answers, so we're just trying to get a little bit of background. Okay, so we've got quite a few interesting links to what the post-16 rig is all about. I'm just going to move on. Okay, don't want to cut anybody off, but I'm just a little bit conscious that we're running out of time, so I'll just move on. If I can figure out how to do that when just move, there we go, I've covered it up. Okay, so are there any topics that you would like the rig to focus on? Thank you. That will definitely give myself, Ali, and Abdullah something to think about. And the final question is, apart from webinars, what else would you like the rig to be doing? So far, we've really only concentrated on, this is the second webinar, and also we ran a hybrid event at the actual conference. So what other than the webinars would you like us to do? I shall leave that one open, but I will change to, oh, yeah, I think that's something. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll leave that one open for now, but I'll just change my screen just to finish off the session. So obviously the three of us are volunteers. If you want to get more involved with the rig, or you have any particular topics of interest, or you're able to promote any of the activities we do please get in touch with us. There are our email addresses. We're more than happy to share plans and get more people involved. Just because we're the co-conveners, it doesn't mean that it's all about us. It's about the membership. I just want to plug the conference. I seem to have got myself nowhere to put that and nowhere to put that, which is happening next July 3rd to the 5th at the Leonardo Hotel in Cardiff. It looks absolutely beautiful. I've never actually been to that part of Cardiff before, but it looks absolutely stunning. I'm really looking forward to it. Just pick out a few key dates. The abstract submission is open, but it does close at the end of next month. And then the review process will take place from the 1st of December to Monday the 15th, with decisions being made between 16th and the 23rd, and then we will be looking to send out notifications the first week of January. As I said, the conference is a midday start on the Friday and runs through to just after lunch on the Sunday. Our next event is going to be in early spring. Further details will be released shortly, and we would like to thank you for attending. It would be great to hear any comments or for you to get in touch with us about this event or any other events, or just any thoughts. Be really good. So thank you all for attending, and I will stop sharing now. And Cynthia, if you can stop the recording, that would